most of us have taken so many antibiotics that have compromised our gut diversity.
60 to 70 million Americans are living with gut issues. It's crazy.
You can't live in today's world and not be pooping. What is the risk? Cancer, 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 cancer.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Biohack-it. And today's guest, Bianca Peyvan, isn't just a functional dietitian. She is a health detective with a background in integrative nutrition, clinical lab testing, and holistic culinary training. She bridges the gap between science and intuition. Bianca, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So one of the things I'm really excited to talk to you today about is you do this incredible thing with DNA tests on people and you read their tests. You can talk about genetic mutations and it tells you a lot about your patients. So it's not just about like, here's your blood work, here's your gut test, but you're able to actually check genes and genetics.
Yes.
So I want to dive straight into that piece of it.
Sure.
And talk to you about like how can everybody apply this? And two, what does it mean? And obviously you have my test live. I haven't even seen it in God knows how long. So let's go over it.
Well, I think this was the missing piece for me. If I could just step back and share a little story about breast implant illness. Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, I started becoming more aware of breast implant illness, and I looked at the symptoms of breast implant illness, and they are very identical or they overlap with other stealth infections like Lyme, like Epstein-Barr virus. So I started thinking, oh, that's interesting. You know, these symptoms are very similar. We're talking about things like fatigue, gut issues, joint pain, hair loss, migraines. Pretty much these are the symptoms that people come to see me about. And I decided to, do a little bit more investigation on my own body. And I did a toxin burden test to see, let's just look at my toxin burden load. Cause I'm someone who's, detoxing every day in some way or another. And I was shocked to see I had 2 to 3 pages of toxins. And then I started, putting the dots together. Oh, interesting. My body is storing a lot of toxins or is very toxic. And why is that? And that's where the genes became the missing link. Because what I learned after doing my genetics is I'm actually missing 2 out of 3 glutathione genes. Okay. So glutathione is our master antioxidant. And this pathway is so important in neutralizing free radicals, which we know cause aging, damage, disease, inflammation. And I realized, wow, my body's just missing these instructions on how to actually detox. So I'm actually storing them. I realized I'm actually not a great candidate for something like breast implants that degrade over time. And so I think figuring out these glutathione genes was a game changer for me.
It's funny you brought up glutathione. So and we'll get into this, but until I had my DNA test, and this is one of the few things I do remember, I guess I don't have a gene for it. So if I take straight glutathione, it demineralizes my body. So I stopped. I was injecting myself with glutathione because, a peptide doctor friend of mine had given it to me. And all of a sudden I'm feeling really tired and fatigued because it demineralizes me. And I have to take the precursor, which is NAC.
So actually, you do have glutathione genes.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's 3 glutathione genes. They all start with GSP. Okay. So the first one is GSP1. This is the first line of defense in the lungs. Okay. So whenever, I just walked in your studio and I just took a huge whiff of fragrance.
Yeah.
From, air fresheners, whatever they're cleaning the elevators with. So your lungs may not have a great glutathione pathway or defense system to be able to manage that. Okay. So you actually do a great job of that. So you do have this first line of defense in the lungs, which is great. So you can take glutathione, but there's another gene called GSTT1, and this is your second line of defense. And this is, okay, once those toxins get in from the lungs, how do I then neutralize them and get them out? This is where you only have 1 copy of the gene. And you're very lucky, Iman, that you have 1 copy of the gene. I have 0 copies of this gene, okay? So you do this job a little better than I do, but you can't take glutathione from the get-go. You need to start with the precursors like NAC, and then you start microdosing glutathione. Okay, so we can do that together.
And if microdosing, how much of a dosage are we talking about?
Exactly. So you can start with 100 milligrams a day. So you might want to do something like a liposomal liquid or gel form that you can control and then see how you feel. If you start to feel tired or brain fog, that dose is too fast, too strong.
Okay.
Okay. And then another gene you have is called GSTM1. So this is glutathione in the gut. And this is so important. I don't have this, okay? So I
really got screwed on the glutathione
I really got
genes.
screwed on the glutathione genes. And that means I need to actually take really good care of my gut.
Yeah.
You know, like leaky gut is synonymous with this gene, but you have 2 copies of this gene, which sounds great, okay? But it's actually detrimental. It can be detrimental. Okay. So remember, your genes are still operating as if you are a cave woman. So assuming you're a cave woman, this would be great because if you were eating something moldy or toxic, then your gut would do such a good job of cleaning this up. But in today's society, we're bombarded with so many different layers of toxins. And so the gut becomes hypervigilant, and this could lead to more antibodies and even autoimmune. So someone like you and someone like me, we could really benefit from ongoing gut work. So obviously managing pathogens in the gut, candida, parasites. We've done plenty of parasite cleanses. But we also need to repair and restore the gut. So something like doing a 24-hour fast would actually be really beneficial for you and I to activate stem cells in the gut. So that's something we can do together.
We should do a challenge together on social.
We should. You know, if you can even get to 36 hours, that's even better.
As long as it doesn't affect the fat in my face, which we'll talk about.
We'll have to wait a bit, maybe.
I want to talk about one thing before I go into, I wrote down about something about parasite cleansing, but I want to talk about your explants. You personally had an explant. Well, it was 3 years ago now, right?
2 years.
2 years ago.
Yes.
And so what are some of the other things that if women listening to this, I have implants, right? So we know for anybody listening, I have implants. What are signs and symptoms of somebody suffering from explant illness? And what, even if they're small little signs, what could they be?
If you Google BII, you will see a list of over 40 symptoms for breast implant illness. So it's really difficult. It's such a spectrum of different symptoms, but usually it's chronic fatigue is at the top of that list, joint pain, headaches, just not being able to really maybe recover well from things. So let's say you do like a stressful workout or something, maybe you don't have good recovery. You start to get brain fog, which is brain inflammation. So it's really toxin burden piling up, maybe in combination with a leaky gut that looks like brain inflammation as well, or leaky brain. So it's not something I connected. I thought, okay, my implants are in good shape. I've had them. My surgeon told me they'd be good for even 30 years. So I never considered, these break down, or, maybe there's a reason there's only a 10-year warranty on them,
For somebody who, for example, like me, who's not having any of those signs and symptoms, but I've only had my implants for 3 years. Yeah, just three or four. No, actually I've had my implants for 4 years. If I'm not showing any signs and symptoms and I want to keep my implants, is that something I should just swap out at the 10-year mark?
So now that I have access to like toxin burden testing and this genetic testing, I can tell if someone is or isn't, I don't want to say a good candidate, but someone's has better detox pathways to be able to mitigate.
Move through that.
And manage the toxins that come out of. So here's the problem with breast implants. Or any implant. Whenever you put an implant in your body creates a biofilm around it. And what that biofilm is it's a home. It's a home for bacteria, viruses, parasites. And so what happens is a lot of these pathogens become undetected by the immune system. And another thing that's now found in these biofilms is mold toxins. I was a part of a study with women with breast implants who had them removed, and it was both silicone and saline. And what we found was that every woman tested positive and was highly reactive to mold. Their body was having an allergic reaction to mold. And so,
even if it wasn't in their environment, it was just coming up
it was building in that biofilm or that scar capsule, which is sometimes also called. So it's more about how do you control that, right? Yeah. So I think knowing what I know now, I don't really have any regrets about it. I think that they served their purpose. They gave me the confidence and I felt better in clothes for so long. But I will tell you, and I know this from working with so many women now who have explanted, you do end up with a lot more breast tissue than you had before you got implants. So, I think it's about also like when you get older, you just accept your body more and realize, actually, I'm not my body. This is just a vessel.
Yeah.
And
that's a really good way to look at it.
yeah, a lot of people are very identified with their body or their face as themselves. And that's why we're so hard on ourselves sometimes.
If you're spending hundreds on skincare but ignoring one of the most powerful anti-aging tools out there, you are missing out, my biohackers. I'm talking about red light therapy and Bond Charge's red light face mask. It has completely changed the game for me. Red light therapy isn't just another hype. It penetrates deep into the skin, boosting collagen, reducing inflammation, and easing signs of aging. And the best part, it's cordless, it's lightweight, and totally painless. So I can wear it while I'm getting work done, watching TV, or even making a quick smoothie for myself or taking my dogs for a walk. I've tried a lot of skincare treatments, and let's be honest, some of them are messy, others are time-consuming, or just plain uncomfortable. But this mask makes it so easy, just 10 minutes a day, and I've noticed my skin is brighter, clearer, and even more even-toned. No downtime, no hassle, and because Bond Charge products are HSA, FSA eligible, you can use your health-saving funds to invest in your skin. Trust me, you need this in your skincare routine ASAP. Right now, my listeners get 15% off when you order from bondcharge.com. Just use my exclusive code Biohack-it at checkout. That's bondcharge.com, plus you'll get free shipping and a 12-month warranty. Again, that's Biohack-it. Go grab yours now. Your skin will thank you later.
So I want to also go into, now that you have the DNA test, what other stuff came up that we should be aware of that told you a little bit about my health and you were like, oh, this explains her nature and her personality.
Okay, so you asked me a few questions before. So it was just like, well, let's talk about obesity genes first. Okay, so there's 2 obesity genes that we test for. So one is called FTO, and this is there a lag between the brain and the gut communication, letting you know you're full? Okay, and you have this. Okay, you have a suboptimal version of this gene, which is why you're such a good eater.
Love food. People get shocked, but I love food.
So you could actually benefit from really starting your plate with much more fiber. So fiber has this ability to expand in the gut. And then once your stomach is usually only like 2 liters big. So yeah, so the more fiber that you eat, Iman, you're going to be able to tell your gut, I'm full and I don't need to keep eating and eating, or maybe getting seconds or thirds. And then there's another gene, but you actually have the optimal version of this. I don't. This is called MC4R, and this has to do with satiety. So this has to do with like your tongue's satisfaction. So for me, I think you've seen my plates. They're always like really colorful, and they have a lot of different flavors and sauces and textures, because I'm not satisfied until I have umami, sour, spicy, sweet, crunchy, colors, variety. That's when I'm like, okay, I can put down the knife and fork.
I'm good.
But people who have the suboptimal version of this gene, if they're just eating like a very boring, plain, like, chicken, broccoli, rice diet, they're so unsatisfied. Yeah. They're like, I'm not full. I need more. And so they're grazing and they're snacking. Yeah. So you don't have this. So you're very lucky.
Even though I get super frustrated if you give me a super basic meal, I'm just like, I do not want to be eating that.
I know. We're spoiled. As a dietitian, that's the advice that I give my clients is, try to get as much protein as you can, half the plate being protein, but then the other half just being a variety of different colors and flavors. And that's what's actually going to give you that protection. Each plant has a unique antioxidant, and what antioxidants do is they quench free radicals. So a lot of people don't know is that it's usually the skin or the seed that has the highest form of antioxidant in foods, and that's also where the fiber is. So,
and what are some of the main ones people listening to can go to and be like, these are the ones I should incorporate into my diet?
I think if you're getting purple, if you're getting greens, if you're getting orange, yellow, red, like you're really hitting all these different antioxidants that have different functions in the body.
And when you're meal prepping for yourself, because obviously you're a chef as well and you're incredible at that, when you look at your week, right, and you're meal prepping because you're somebody who's busy, you're like, I'm just going to have this prepared. What are quick things that you try to prepare for yourself and put away, and they give you the fiber, they give you your protein, they give you everything that you need throughout the week? And it can just be checked off your list.
So usually what I do is I really try to eat as much from a farmer's market as I can. Eating things from a farm is like a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Right? These single nutrients. So I try to go to the farmer's market and try to find as many new things, because that's where you're going to see variety. If you're going, to your general supermarket, you might just see the same things every week. And that's what I see in a lot of stool testing is people have very low gut diversity is because they're eating the same food every single week. So I say, if you see a different type of cabbage, if you see a different type of onion, or potato, try it, mix it up, and try to at least have all these different high fiber vegetables. So you come home, you bring them home, you wash and sanitize them, you chop them up, and you throw them in an oven. And I like to do high heat, and I usually use either ghee, avocado oil, coconut oil. I don't obviously cook with seed oils. Those can be really inflammatory if we're cooking in high heat. And then those just get really beautiful and caramelized, and I just keep them in the fridge in containers. And I always have a bed of arugula. I think arugula is a really great hack for people who can't do a lot of cruciferous vegetables like cauliflower, broccoli. So that could be kind of your bed, and then you have your rainbow veggies, and then your protein you can also prep in advance. Like I love to do things in the Instant Pot. I love to do things in even the toaster oven is like such a great hack.
Really?
Yeah, because it works like an air fryer if you turn on the convection. So I literally cook everything in my toaster oven these days.
Having all this incredible experience that you've had, you're an incredible chef, you're working with clients, you're helping people like heal things like their gut or women stabilizing their hormones. What has been probably one of the most rewarding things in your career since you went into this space that was like almost like a pinch me moment? Was there a certain client or a certain moment that was like, wow, like I'm doing the right thing and I'm on the right path?
So here's what I think. I think a lot of times people see a functional medicine doctor or practitioner and they can only maybe afford one visit, and they're given their protocol and then they're kind of left to figure out the rest on their own. I don't work that way. I usually have at least a 5-call engagement with my clients because I'm committed to helping them and I feel responsible for their journey. So we do a lot of testing and we retest, which is really cool. So I think when you can troubleshoot with your client on a protocol, which would include diet, which would include lifestyle, which would include supplementation, and then retest them and show them like, look, you did this. You worked so hard. You were so diligent. You were consistent. And people who are not consistent do not get results. That is like the most rewarding part of my job is when we're in a retest and I can show my client like how far they've come.
And was there a specific client, like almost like a case study that you were really able to help them turn around their health in it? Obviously all of it matters, but was there something specifically that stands out to you when you think back and look at your career?
I do have many stories I can share with you, but I will tell you the one thing that women tell me again and again and again that you help me do is you help me poop.
Oh yeah. I don't know how people go through life not taking enough shits.
Well,
it's a big thing.
It's a really big problem. That's one of the problems I had, which, as a young child, and I would even go to my doctor and my doctor would say, oh, take Miralax or take fiber or drink more water. It's like, well, no, why am I not going to the bathroom? And your colon, if that's backed up, that pileup causes so much inflammation and recirculation of toxins because you're not able to get things out. And that's what happens with a lot of women who have bad PMS symptoms, who have high estrogen. It's because they're recirculating and recycling their toxins and estrogen because they can't poop. And everything is draining to the colon, right? So your brain has a lymphatic system. Your teeth have their own lymphatic system. You have your lymph. You have your gallbladder draining bile. You have your liver. You have your kidneys. All of these different drainage systems have to leave the body, and they can only leave through pooping, urinating, and sweating. Yeah. And also your lungs, that's another drainage pathway as well. So we really need to be supporting constantly our drainage pathways. It is just non-negotiable. You can't live in today's world and not be pooping, okay? So you need to figure out, does magnesium help, for example? Sometimes it's as simple as taking magnesium, what magnesium does is it relaxes the muscles. So, okay, Well, then those muscles are tense. And you know, our gut holds the most nerve endings. It's constantly communicating with the brain via the vagus nerve. And so if you're anxious, if you're have trauma, if you are not letting go of something, those can also cause constipation. There's also bacteria, and that's why I love stool testing. There's methane-producing bacteria that do not want to leave. They want to stick around, and they release methane gas and slow down the motility of the gut. So that's another thing. Parasites, candida, all these things which I had, can pile up and really cause your detox pathways to get backed up.
And what did you have to do to start pooping more?
Well,
personally for you,
yeah.
magnesium,
So for
what
me,
was it?
For me, it was magnesium, and it was more water, because I really started to, because people think they drink water, but they don't, or they don't absorb water. Okay, so they either need minerals to help shuttle water into the cells. A lot of people drink water and it just runs right through them, right? So you really need to make sure that you're drinking enough water, you're getting enough fiber. Fiber is like scrubbing the gut down. A lot of people don't get fiber because they're eating a lot of packaged foods or standard American diet. There's no fiber in that diet.
We're emphasizing so much on fiber. What's your take on people that are more like keto focused, like keto people?
Well, again, we go with their genetics. How well do you metabolize fat? How well do you metabolize sugar? Are you a good candidate for keto and carnivore? Some people are.
Am I a good candidate?
You are not. No. Well, you're not a bad, actually, you could do cyclical keto, actually. Okay. So let's talk about that for a minute. So you have this amazing ability, believe it or not, unbeknownst to you, to break down carbohydrates. Yes. Okay. And that's what you've been doing wrong, believe it or not. So you have not been breaking down your you have not been eating enough carbohydrates, which actually, this is why we don't get results at the gym. It's not, now, by the way, this is not everybody. This is not me. I don't do a great job of breaking down sugars. You do a wonderful job of breaking down starches into glucose, into energy. So you need more carbohydrates in your diet.
Really?
Yes, because if you don't have them, this can cause brain fog. This can cause you to lose your period. Okay. Yeah. There's actually like really good research on this. So you do need to eat more carbohydrates.
And when we're saying more, how much are we talking about?
Well, I think I'd have to analyze what you're already eating and see. I mean, if you're doing keto, you're not eating
of course.
carbs.
Yeah.
You're not eating enough carbs, but I would definitely, if you're actively lifting heavy weights, building muscle, and you're active, like you need carbohydrates, and all women need carbohydrates. We need these to make hormones and to feel calm. So it's about finding how much and how little, but you do an amazing job
at breaking down carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Now I know that. I'm going to start eating more carbs again.
You should.
I love my, it's funny you say that because I'm somebody who genuinely craves carbs. Like I have these cravings and I'm just like, I just need to have more carbs. And instinctually, I'm just somebody who like has never ever gone full keto in any way. Yes, I eat a lot of meat. I like being kind of more carnivore, but I kind of like, I think if I look at my diet, I'm kind of more paleo orientated than versus, and I love eating fat.
You do a moderate job of utilizing fat for energy. So you would actually do better with a Mediterranean diet. That would be the diet I would recommend for you.
Yeah.
With an emphasis in more protein.
Look at all this stuff I'm learning about myself.
If you're serious about your long-term health, there's one vitamin you're probably not getting enough of, no matter how clean your diet is. Nearly 97% of people in the Western world are deficient in vitamin K2, and most don't even realize it. That's why K2 is nearly non-existent in modern diets, but it plays a huge role in heart health, circulation, bone strength, and even brain function. So here's why it matters so much. Low K2 levels can show up as weak bones, stiff muscle, bruising, wrinkles, and even forgetfulness and brain fog. It also is linked to major cardiovascular and bone health issues down the line. That's why I'm so excited about Just Thrive's K27, the only K2 supplement on the market that comes from 100% organic chickpea natto, the best source of K2. Delivers 320 mcg of pharmaceutical grade K27, the optimal daily dose. Has guaranteed potency so your body actually absorbs what it needs. It's microbiologist formulated, clinically tested, and supports your heart, bones, brain, and circulation at the source. I've made it a part of my daily routine, and I think you'll love it too. Check it out at justthrivehealth.com and use code Biohack-it for a discount and enjoy.
I also want to talk about the protein thing that, kind of a lot of women get stuck that we don't get enough grams of protein in the day. It's really hard.
Yes, it is.
So what are some of your like little hacks to make sure you're getting 100, 120, whatever grams of protein in?
Yeah. So I just...
And men. Actually.
Yeah. And I think women, we should be aiming for something like 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight. It's not always easy to do. And as we get older, we don't absorb it very well. So a lot of times I will tell my clients to eat their protein first, because when you're mixing protein with other things like carbs and veggies, you don't absorb as much. So I always say eat your protein first, get a food scale as an experiment. Just start weighing your protein, because a lot of people think they eat, a lot of protein, but they really don't. I love powders. I think they're just a wonderful way to sneak in more protein. I love adding protein powder and collagen to even Greek yogurt, or, cottage cheese is having such a moment. You could also add it to cottage cheese and whip it. Those are great ways to kind of sneak in extra protein if you don't want to do like a smoothie or a shake.
Should I completely gross you out? So I started taking my smoothie in the morning that I have as part of my breakfast. I do the collagen, I add the amino acids, I drop in the protein, and then I put in 2 raw eggs.
Okay. Should we do a stool test? And you also do raw dairy, right?
The raw dairy. I just love it. So I threw in the 2. And you see my poor housekeeper in the morning. She's cracking these eggs open. She's like, what is going on here?
Does it have like a nice mouthfeel, the eggs? Like, does it?
I just chug it, And I'm just like, this gives me at least like, let's say my protein shake is about 20 to 25 grams of protein. Then you have the collagen, amino acids. I'm like, okay. And then the 2 eggs, I'm getting close to 30, grams in essentially. So that's what I'm doing to start my day.
I think it's okay. You're front loading your protein for the day. I think a lot of people think you can't absorb that much protein.
Oh, that was debunked, by the way.
That's been debunked. Yeah. So I think that do what's working for you.
And I have what's it called? I have bone broth first thing in the morning now. Like a regenerative bone broth.
You could add collagen to your bone broth to boost the protein as well.
Can we talk to everybody about that debunked study that basically came out? Because there was this whole myth that you can only absorb a certain amount of protein per meal. And then that kind of got debunked basically to be like, that's not true.
Well, so whenever you're eating protein, you break it down into amino acids. And so there's these free-floating amino acids that are constantly circulating in the body. And there is no explanation as to why we're not able to utilize that. Your body is so interesting. You actually, when you're in a state of fasting or autophagy, a lot of people are worried about losing protein at that time too. But your body is actually taking broken proteins that are fraying off your muscles and almost recycling them or reusing them. So our body is always trying to preserve our protein.
Right. So we discussed what we can do to take an extra protein. Would the same go for men? Because they
have a higher need.
Yeah.
So they have a much higher need. Surprising one. I work with a lot of men as well, and I show them what 100-gram protein meal plan looks like, and they say, "Oh, I don't even get that," And I was like, "Well, you need double this."
Yeah.
So you really need to get some help with those powders. And
and what is your favorite powder at the moment that you're taking? Protein powder.
So I use Needed Collagen. That's a prenatal line. I love their collagen. It's from grass-fed New Zealand cows. And I also use the Equip protein as well, which is mostly cowhide protein.
I was using Equip for a while. I just switched to this, I think it's goat-based protein that I'm trying out. I have to look up the brand.
Goat whey?
Goat whey protein. Yeah, that's what I kind of switched to for now to see how my body does.
Whey is very bioavailable.
Yeah. It's not for everybody again, but it works if it works for you.
Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody. A lot of people have horrible reactions to whey. They even get acne from whey. So it's about testing things out and seeing what works.
What works for you in the kitchen and kind of documenting it. You taught me this, is to keep a bit of a food diary when you're trying something new and document it, write it down, think about how you're feeling on it, how your body's reacting on it, and that will give you a good gauge if this is something you should be taking or not. I want to talk a little bit about toxins. So you talked about having a full toxin burden load. This is also research that I found. So the Environmental Working Group says the average woman uses 12 personal care products daily with 168 unique chemicals. And that's just crazy because I realize that women obviously get more toxins in because of our personal care products. We do more with ourselves than men do. But women are also on the rise for getting more chronic diseases, and autoimmune issues are coming up for women than versus men. Like, I think 1 in 3 women or 1 in 4 women is developing like a thyroid related issue right now. It's some statistics that I saw that was crazy. So do you think that is down to we're not methylating properly and we're not detoxing properly? And is it down to the fact that our personal care products, we're exposed to so many more toxins? What is going on here when it comes to women's health?
So many layers. It's so many layers. If you think about ancestrally, like, what is our role as a woman? You know, like we're here to really protect and take care and be hypervigilant. One of the genes that you and I both share is a dysregulated serotonin gene. And what that does is it makes you very detail oriented. And this is actually a profile that I have where, as a cave woman, my role in the tribe would be to always be checking the weather to see if the weather is about to change, to see if even a leaf is unturned, to warn the tribe, and just to really be hyper vigilant about the environment. That attention to detail is a superpower, and women have that. And so what we're trying to do is be as protective. In my case, it helps me with like what I do and trying to solve people's problems, right?
Yeah.
So that's one layer, is that we have this hyper vigilance and almost like anxiety about worrying about all the things. Okay, so that puts us in a state of sometimes a fight or flight, where when you're in fight or flight, it's really hard to really rest and recover and heal. You talked about methylation, so that's a really good thing to bring up too. A lot of people don't know they have broken methylation genes. So, for example, methylation is a pathway. It's a process in the body where we use methyl groups, and we use these methyl groups to make functions happen. So some of these functions are like getting rid of toxic estrogens, detoxification, making neurotransmitters, making melatonin. So we really use methylation for so many things, and we also use it for gene expression. So it also tells which genes to turn on and off. So what happens is some of us don't do a great job of methylating. You actually have really decent methylation genes. So you don't have the MTHFR gene mutation. No, you don't. You have the optimal version. Yeah, I know. Did you know that? So you can actually take any B complex, but it's not just MTHFR. I know that that's the most popular functional gene that's talked about, but there's also one called SHMT1. And that one tells you if you're a candidate for methylcobalamin, or do you need a different type called folinic acid. And a lot of women need folinic acid. They do not know, and they take, maybe even a prenatal with folic acid, which is synthetic, that their body does not know how to use or process. And that can lead to other issues as well. That could even lead to postpartum.
And by the way, on the folic acid piece, it's actually not, like, majority of women actually shouldn't be taking it.
Correct.
And it's not natural to your body at all. It's something that's sprayed on our foods.
Right.
And we don't, and this is a whole myth, by the way, guys, if you're listening to this, that if you're getting pregnant or trying to conceive and they're like, take folic acid, it's actual complete bullshit. You should not be taking folic acid.
I know. It just drives me crazy when people go to Costco and buy their prenatal from there, and I read the ingredients and I see folic acid. And I'm just like, I feel so defeated.
Yeah. And it's terrible for you. Not only is it going to give you methylation issues, which a lot of women are having, but it ends up leaving you, and correct me if I'm wrong, it can also leave you extremely inflamed. It can also cause other issues. Like you said, postpartum is something you can have.
Yeah,
come
absolutely. You can get anxiety, it can be harmful for your mind. Another great thing that methylation is used for is to take a toxin that maybe is not water soluble and making it water soluble so you can pee, poop, sweat it out. Otherwise, this toxin lingers and lingers. A lot of people have wonderful glutathione genes. They're really able to detox well, but they don't have good methylation genes. So they're like, well, why don't I feel good? And that could be an explanation as to why. So besides methylation, the other thing that we haven't talked about yet is hormones. So hormones can also be toxic. They can also be lingering around. They can also be hard to clear. And this is where we start getting different types of symptoms. For example, as women, we can get fibroids, or we can get growths, or we can cause DNA damage, oxidative stress. So we need to really also think about that other background layer of inflammation slowly trickling down.
People aren't talking about this enough, but I truly want to optimize your health. We need to be paying attention to EMFs. We are constantly plugged in, surrounded by wireless signals, radiation, frequencies that our bodies have never ever been able to handle at this level. Research has shown that EMFs can disrupt sleep, impact cellular function, and contribute to long-term health issues. Yet we're rarely talking about this or how to protect ourselves from this. This is why I was so excited when I first discovered Lila Quantum Tech. I met them 2 years ago at a biohacking conference in Austin and was absolutely blown away by the founder, Philip Mon. Hearing him on stage and learning about quantum energy technology completely shifted my perspective. I knew I had to try it for myself. And now, 2 years later, I'm so excited to have them partner with me on my podcast. One of my absolute favorite products, the Heal 360 capsule, which I wear on my quantum necklace every day. This isn't just any pendant. It's scientifically designed and quantumly charged to support your body's natural ability to heal, energize, and protect itself from harmful influences. People using it have reported more energy, mental clarity, better stress resilience, and relaxation, deeper sleep, and faster recovery. And that is also the feedback I got from our supper club when I gifted it to all our guests. Lila Quantum Tech is leading the way in quantum frequency healing with products designed to neutralize EMFs, enhance cellular function, and help your body operate at its best. I personally felt the difference since wearing Heal 360 capsule, and I think you'll love it too. Check it out at lilaq.com and use code Biohack-it for a discount. That is LEELAQ.com and use code Biohack-it. Happy healing. Talking about hormones, I have this thing with like estrogen dominance, right? I have like toxic estrogen that's always like floating in my system. I posted this on Instagram the other day and somebody's like, what are the signs and symptoms? Well, for me, it was just that I was like gaining weight on my hips and I was feeling like sluggish. But what are other signs of estrogen dominance?
So let's talk about that because I have your results here. It's production and then there's clearance. You're beautiful in your production. You have perfect estrogen balance, but something in your environment is tipping the scale, okay? That's changing the expression of your genes. When we remove estrogens from the body, there are 3 pathways. They're called the good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? So that ugly pathway is the 4OH pathway, which that's where you struggle. You're sending your estrogens down this unprotective, unhealthy pathway that leads to symptoms like, maybe more growth around the hips or the stomach, and even breast tissue. People who have a more estrogenic body type are going to have more of that hourglass body type. And people who are more androgenic are going to look more like a model, just with less shape. Yeah. So I think it's about figuring out, do I also have this layer of toxic hormones that I have to manage? So for men, that's sometimes DHT, another form of testosterone that causes hair loss, cystic acne, that's another toxic estrogen that men deal with, and sometimes women too. And that's where we see, sometimes PCOS.
And when you said there might be something in my environment, what does that mean? Is there something in, what is that?
Okay, so great question. So there's all these estrogen mimics in our environment that are coming from fragrances, that are coming from cosmetics. I think you have to be very careful when you look at a product and you see fragrance. There's a huge loophole there. So in the 1960s, fragrance is proprietary. So they were able to just write fragrance instead of disclosing what's in it. And so now beauty brands can put fragrance and we don't actually know what's in it.
And this was in the 1960s,
yes,
and they still haven't
still
updated.
Grandfathered in. Yeah, so be careful with the word fragrance. Opt for things that are unscented because this can confuse your hormones. This can bind to your estrogen receptors. This can tip the scale, so to speak.
And essentially in this word called fragrance, there are obviously synthetics that they put in, and those synthetics, when they're touched upon and absorbed by your body, is what's causing the confusion, basically.
Yeah, and what's funny is if you think about like where people, men and women, where are we putting our colognes and perfumes? We're putting it on our lymph nodes. We're putting it on our thyroid. this is not where you need to be putting chemicals that just absorbs right straight into the bloodstream.
You always tell me if you're going to wear, like, obviously I've switched to like non-toxic beauty products and all that stuff, but you always tell me put it on your clothes, do not touch perfume.
Yeah,
even though it's a non-toxic perfume on your skin.
If you love a toxic perfume, I would rather you put it on your clothes instead of having it touch your
body.
Contact with your skin.
When it comes to, so estrogen dominance we spoke about, I'm on this amazing thing that you actually recommended to me and I'm taking it all the time called Brock Shot. What ended up happening for me, and this was my telltale sign that I had toxic estrogen before I obviously did the DNA test. I was having really, really painful period. Like my first day of my period, my cycle was like god awful. Like I would just be in so much pain, but I would just trudge through the day because I was like, I just have to.
We have to.
Yeah, because I have to show up to work. I have shit to do, and I don't take any sort of painkillers. So I would just like work my way through it, but I was dying. I was so uncomfortable. Since I started taking Brock Shot, I mean, my first day of my cycle, it's still my first day of my cycle, but it's not so painful now.
Yeah.
So what's
happening there?
Yeah, what's happening there?
So remember I told you you're favoring this 4-OH pathway, the ugly pathway. So what sulforaphane, which is the active antioxidant, what it does is actually shunts that toxic estrogen down a more protective pathway called the 2-OH pathway. So now you're metabolizing your estrogens properly, which are going to lead to less symptoms. And so it's been a game changer for a lot of people.
That one, and then you gave me another supplement that you told me to get. It's called like
calcium deglucarate.
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about glutathione. There's another detox pathway called glucuronidation, and we use this pathway to get rid of mold. There's certain bacteria in the gut that do this really dirty thing. What they do, so your liver, like we were talking about, metabolizes your estrogen and it packages it very nicely with a little bow and it sends it down to the colon to be excreted. These gut bugs, they unravel that ribbon, they create an enzyme called glucuronidase and that recirculates your estrogen back into the bloodstream, get in line to the liver, start all over again. And that's why people have backed up, exactly, a bottleneck situation.
Yeah.
So calcium deglucarate is another way to support the glucuronidation pathway, support mold detox, which I know you are also working on. So it's really like a good 2-for-1.
It's been really great. Yeah. So basically we talked about some of the things, but can we go over some like simple swaps that you've done or detox rituals that have made a really big difference in reducing like everyday exposure for you or dropping down your overall toxin burden load?
That's a really good question. So I think 3 simple things that we can all do is the first thing is like your water. So you and I have been on the EWG.org website. If you can look up your municipal water by zip code and, you're seeing what is in your water. And, this is a Miami water treatment plant that doesn't really treat the water. They treat it maybe for bacteria, but they're still leaving plenty of arsenic in the water. They're leaving radium in the water. They're leaving chromium that causes cancer in the water. So, and if you look, there's 17 contaminants. And if you look, what is the risk? You'll see cancer, 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 cancer. So we're washing our food in that water. We're bathing in that water. We're washing our children in the bathtub of this. So we really need to start looking at whole home filtration systems. So I recommend reverse osmosis. If you can't do that, you live in an apartment, you can at least address your drinking water. So you can have distilled water delivered. Distilled water has 0 parts per million. So I remineralize my distilled water. I have a shower filter. There's now sink water filters. So there are things that you can do to at least lessen that burden. But if you remove, because think about it, you're dealing with water every day, all day long. So you're taking a repeat insult like water out, then you're allowing your body to be able to detox.
Look, I'm bringing up my big water I go around with everywhere.
Exactly. So I think water is a big one. The other thing that people don't think about is at home, being exposed to chemicals or fragrance in the home. A lot of time, like we don't air out our homes anymore, So I think having a HEPA air filter is really helpful, especially in the room that you're sleeping, especially if you work from home. You want to be cleaning the toxins in the air as well. And then the other thing you can do is also go on EWG and download the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, and you can figure out, okay, if budget is an issue, what produce can I get that has to be organic, non-negotiable, and what do I get that maybe I can get conventional? And at least start there.
Yeah. For me, I do want to talk about the air purification thing. So I have obviously, if anybody listening, I have 4 massive dogs in the house. So one thing, I'm really sensitive to smell, and you'd be like, this girl's crazy. She has 4 massive dogs. I don't like smell at all. But also mold and all of this stuff sits in your air. So I invested, and recently we've just swapped out all the filters in the house. We moved to a brand called Jasper because they were one of the best brands on the market to the amount of space that filter takes up and kind of expels things. But 2, it's really good to even pick up mold particles. And they have this whole research that they've done in the air with there was mold, and they started running the filter and took out all the mold from the air. So taking out synthetic fragrances, taking out mold, obviously dust, which is a big thing. Smell obviously goes because of VOCs.
Yeah.
So it was just fascinating to me. And I smell the air quality in my house now.
It's better?
Much better. And nothing smells damp and
Yeah. Well, wait till you change your filter. Whenever I change my filter, I'm horrified of what I find in there. I'm like, how is this possible? And it's so much dust.
Yes.
It's a lot of different contaminants from the air. So people have to consider that.
Yeah, and I always tell people, you need to invest in a really good air purifier and not the average shit that you find personally on Amazon, because that stuff really doesn't work. They're like, oh, why don't we get this thing from Samsung or whatever? I was like, no, you need to go to a company that specializes in building air filters and does a really good job, and that is what they're selling you. And they have proof of concept
of
expelling
Jasper.
things. Yeah, I love Jaspers. I thought they were great. I met the founder right now in Austin as well, and I just thought he's a great guy.
If you know me, you know I avoid seed oils like the plague. They're everywhere, even in snacks labeled as clean, organic, or healthy. But the truth is, they wreak havoc on your metabolism, your hormones, and make you super inflamed. That's why I'm obsessed with Prima, one of the few products I completely trust. Prima was created to push back against processed artificial foods and bring us back to real, nutritional, ancestral ingredients that actually nourish your body. It's packed with 100% grass-fed beef tallow, grass-fed collagen, and grass-fed whey protein, delivering bioavailable nutrients for muscle recovery, joint health, and overall vitality without any of the junk. No seed oils, no refined sugars, no artificial additives, and the best part is one of the few products that is certified seed oil safe. I always keep Prima stocked in my bag. It's my go-to post-workout, between meetings, or anytime I need an easy, high-quality protein boost. Getting in at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight can be really tough, but it's essential for building and maintaining muscle as you age or going through a fertility journey in your 40s and 30s like I am. And the flavor is delicious. Cacao, mocha, and salted caramel. You really can't go wrong. My favorite flavor is the salted caramel, plus the Prima bars are sweetened with organic raw honey and only contain organic whole food ingredients. So you're fueling your body with real clean nutrition. Because you're part of the Biohack-it community, you get 20% off. Just use code IMAN20 at eatprima.com. Ditch the seed oils, fuel your body right. You will feel the difference, I promise.
So I wanted to also go back to the DNA test, right? Because I'm just fascinated with this, this damn test. I just want it all. What else can people learn? Or I know that when I did my DNA test, and Kashyap, the founder, originally had quickly spoken to me about it, he said that my dopamine receptors are really, really great. I have really slow, the largest receptors possible for dopamine, and my clearance is slow.
Yep.
Hence, is that maybe why I don't get things like anxiety or depression?
Actually, that makes you be prone to more anxiety because I'll explain and maybe you'll understand. So your dopamine receptors can either be long or dense or short. So people who have really short, they don't get to feel the highs in life, okay? But you do. You get to really feel contentment, intensity, excitement to the full capacity. And you break it down average, and then you clear it very, very, very slowly so it lingers around. So you're going to be more content, okay? So people who get what they want, who are content, who are generally happy, when something bad happens to them, they don't do well with it. Okay, that's what causes anxiety. It's well, no, my life has to work. Yeah. And there's this now this thing that has come and taken the floor out and disrupted me. And so that's where the anxiety can potentially happen. People who have this profile also tend to have more binging behavior. So you can really like get focused on what you want to do. And you're like, and you won't want to do what you don't want to do. You really just want to like
focus on it.
Binge on wellness, you know?
Yeah. And it's like that with me in certain foods, or if I don't really watch much TV, but if I want to get into a show, I'm going to spend all weekend watching that show till I'm done with it. And when I'm so done, I'm like, okay, I finished the whole show. Like, I'm not going to do it in installments. Like,
you're all in.
I'm all in. It's like my shopping habits. When I'm in, I'm in. Like, I'm running a marathon. So
another brain mood gene that you have that's really funny is called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. So this is your ability to like learn new tasks, build new neuronal pathways, and you do an average job of this.
Yeah.
Okay. And people who do an average job of this, they tend to ruminate on things. Okay. So, you know, like I said, like maybe that like thing that happens in your life that takes the floor out, you will start to ruminate. And by the way, there's things we can do to prevent this, but this is also known as the drama queen gene. So maybe that's why you have like, you know, these tendencies.
let's do it.
You have a thrill for drama.
Yeah,
you know?
I can fly off the handle really fast.
So it's not your fault. It's your genes that are being expressed.
Go tell my husband this part.
So you know what's interesting? The recommendation for this is, believe it or not, is sauna. So they found out that people in Finland have the lowest BDNF, but they do so much sauna, and I'm talking like weekly, 3 to 4 times a week.
Right.
And so they were able to increase their neuroplasticity and their BDNF expression through sauna. So that's another way that, you know.
So not only is it like the drama queen gene, but it's also the
Binger.
gene. Yeah, binger. But it also is like you're slow to like, it takes you a couple of times to figure out doing something new before you really can perfect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which makes sense. Yeah. It takes me a minute, and then only when I got it, I got it.
Yeah, I don't experience you that way, but if that makes sense to you.
I feel like I've overwritten some of these things because I see myself as a high performer. I was like, I have to do it. I have to do things fast. So I force myself maybe to override certain genes that I have to just get to the end thing.
You feel reward and pleasure.
Yes.
So if you didn't feel reward and pleasure, it would really depend on how you clear it, if the risk was worth it for you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so I think because you get that dopamine
hit from it. Yeah.
That you continue.
Do you think with the role that social media is now playing in all our lives, and we spend so much time like scrolling, I'm a victim of this definitely for sure, is that deregulating our natural genes and how we clear dopamine and serotonin, or how we get the dopamine serotonin
I think we
hits?
get super hijacked when we're on our phones, and it's very hard to be the awareness of yourself when you're on your phone, because now you're a victim of marketing, as you know. Mm-hmm. And you have to see, do I hold my breath when I'm looking at social media? Am I in fight or flight? Like, I start just feeling really bad when I'm on social media too long, and I have a timer on my system, you know? So I think that social media is wonderful, but also I think there needs to be a limit, because it can disrupt the nervous system.
Yeah, and I was wondering, can it alter our gene expression? And over time, if we're doing too much of like, let's say social media, even if my dopamine clearance is slow, even if I can get that rush for things, can it deregulate me?
I don't know if it can deregulate you. I think it's kind of like the male equivalent would be like playing video games.
Yeah.
You know, it can really mess with someone's like cortisol. And when your cortisol is high, you can't heal, and you know, your blood sugar is spiking.
Okay, so you brought up cortisol, which was something I was actually going to talk about. So now, talk to us a little bit about what is cortisol? What is a role of cortisol, right?
Yeah.
And how do you know if you are too high with your cortisol or you're standardized? Because cortisol plays such a big role in everything from fertility to sleep to hormone production. Like, it's so big.
Yeah.
And it's not spoken about enough. And I know for sure, I can bet you any form of money, if you go to a general doctor, your GP, your standard like
They don't test for it.
They don't ask about it, leave alone test for it.
They don't test
so
for it.
let's talk a little bit about cortisol, because I think it's really important for people to know about the different roles that it plays.
So what is cortisol? It's your stress hormone. And why it's so important is it wakes us up in the morning. So cortisol wakes you up. Otherwise, you continue sleeping. And you get your highest rise of cortisol in the morning within 2 hours of waking up. And then it starts to trickle down like a ski slope and flattens out. So you get tired and you want to go to sleep. Okay. This is an ideal cortisol curve. Not everyone's cortisol curve looks like this. The clients that I have, most of them have either a flat curve where they're so physically tired that their morning and their night are the same, or they start to produce cortisol at night and they wake up completely unrefreshed and exhausted because they've been chased by a bear all night long. So we've got to test for that. And you've got to test cortisol different times of the day to understand your curve. So I usually use the Dutch test to test that. So we test upon waking, within 2 hours of waking, afternoon, when you start feeling that slump, and then bedtime. And then if you have an overnight sample, like let's say you wake up, then you test again at night. So you could test with saliva or with urine. And this usually helps me. And the thing with cortisol is that it really does impact all the other hormones. A lot of times I see when people produce too much cortisol, they're not producing the other sex hormones. So you're either making sex hormones or stress hormones. And, it's important to check and just here's the thing. If you're somebody who's operating with high cortisol levels, a lot of times you're not even aware of it until you see your test results. And then you can say, oh, you know what? I am doing too much. I am burning myself out. And that's what happens. So a lot of people who have high cortisol for a long time, and let's say they have a startup or they're building a new podcast and they're doing the most, what can happen over time is you can get burnout and you can have that flatline cortisol because your body wants you to calm down, go to sleep, take a nap, relax.
All those things.
Rest.
I feel like I come up in some of those things listening to that. I'm like, wait, I think I feel those things at times.
Yeah. But there's adaptogens that are really, really helpful. Sometimes we have a preference for cortisone, which is the inactive form of cortisol. So we can take certain nutrients to speed up those enzymes to make more cortisol. So yeah, it's really important to test. I really think it's one of those first hallmark hormones you need to look at.
So one of the sections I wanted to go over before the end of the podcast for sure was, which you really are so good with, is gut health. So the NIH estimates 60 to 70 million Americans are living with gut issues. It's crazy. Many of these go completely undiagnosed. And people get symptoms like bloating, brain fog, acne, things come up. So you do a really great job. When somebody comes into your practice and wants to work with you, I know this is one of the things that you do a stool test, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
One, my question is, how are there so many people running around America? Is it because of their standard American diet that have gut issues? And two, what are the most common ones you see and how do you kind of clear them out?
Well, I think the first thing we need to talk about is most of us have taken so many antibiotics that have really compromised our gut diversity. And when you think about what makes a good microbiome, think of a garden. If you're a gardener, you want to have raspberries and eggplants and plums and carrots and fennel. And that's kind of how I describe the different species of bacteria that you want to have. And you're trying to create harmonization in the gut. A lot of times our gut commensal, which is our beneficial bacteria, if it's too low, it's not good. And if it's too high, it's not good. Mm-hmm. So it's really about being very precise and telling someone what probiotics they need to actually harmonize their microbiome. I don't always start with probiotics. I like to look at inflammation. I like to see if there's, candida. I like to see if there's parasites, if there's overgrowth of bacteria or actual pathogens. And I like to see if there's biofilms, what we talked about, where these pathogens are fighting. Do we need to also break those down and get rid of them? And once we clear these different bacteria and parasites, that's when we start to repopulate with beneficial bacteria. But I love fermented foods. Fermented foods are a big part of my plate. Not everyone can tolerate them, but, I would say start slow.
Kimchi and stuff.
Kimchi, kefir, Greek yogurt. Those would be great places to dabble in.
And then you're obviously testing your clients with this full stool test. You get the results and then you adjust obviously their diet accordingly, supplementation, kind of gradually take them up in stages.
Yeah, it just depends what, how bad their symptoms are. A lot of times you'll have small intestinal bowel overgrowth, which is also called SIBO. That can take months to clear. That doesn't happen overnight. So sometimes it's structural. Sometimes it's not having, we didn't talk about this, but sometimes not having enough digestive fire makes a huge impact. So a lot of reasons why women are bloated a lot of times is because they don't make stomach acid and they don't make digestive enzymes because perhaps they're in a chronic stress state. Yeah. So if you're running from a bear, you don't care about rest and digest. You're not making these enzymes. You're not making gastric juices to break down your food. So you're going to experience more bloating. And when you don't have good stomach acid, you're not killing pathogens. You're not killing bacteria. And so it's able to get through to the colon.
It's amazing. I've always wondered, I know that the gut itself is such a big proponent of your overall health, and the fact that the statistic was so high for people in America to have such bad gut issues. But again, your general practitioner, this way the American medical system has really let down people, right? Because they're not talking about things like cortisol. They're not talking about your gut health. They're not talking about your stress hormones. And so that's where you go in and it's just like a one size fits all, but they're not looking at the nuances that make people people.
Yeah, and I think that's what's great about having these functional stool tests. I mean, I've taken my functional stool test to a GI specialist before, and they've told me, I'm sorry, this is great, but this is outside of my scope. And so that's why I have to do what I do. I have to advocate for people to get this information so that they can get on top of it.
Yeah.
We don't want these long-term effects of constipation or SIBO or candida to, continue and cause more disease.
Issues. I've loved interviewing you. We've been trying to do this for a long time. Tell my audience where they can find you.
They can find me on my website, biancapeyvan.com, or Instagram at Bianca Peyvan.
You also do great recipes, so they can follow you for your incredible recipes and all your tips. I think your tips are really accessible to people as well. So if you guys are listening, if you just want quick tips and swaps and her grocery hauls and all that stuff, I think you do such a good job at putting all that stuff forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Wonderful.
I just loved chatting to you.
Thank you, Iman. It was great to have you, or having me here.
Have you here.
Thank you for tuning in to Biohack-it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a short review. It really helps us reach more listeners just like you. Follow us on Instagram at biohack-it for exclusive content and the latest updates. Remember, your health is in your hand and curiosity heals.